Okay, so are you ready to dive into this relationship guide with me?
Absolutely. I'm ready. Let's do it.
I have to say, this guide is seriously impressive. I mean, it's got advice on everything from like that super awkward first date.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
I know, right? But it also like goes all the way to like navigating the ups and downs of long-term relationships.
It's really interesting how this guide really stresses the importance of being your true self right from the beginning, like from the very first date.
Totally. That's so important. Like it's basically saying, hey, just be you because you're already awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like was how it talks about choosing a first date activity that actually reflects you and your interests.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like the example in the guide is instead of like a super fancy and maybe even kind of stuffy restaurant date.
I think we've all been there.
Right, like who even likes those? But the guide was like, why not go on a hike?
I love that. It's about being genuine and creating a space where you can really connect with someone who shares your interests. I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you rather be with someone who wants to be hiking right there with you because they genuinely enjoy it
Oh, absolutely.
instead of someone who is just trying to impress you with something they think you'll like?
Totally. It's like walk the walk right, not just talk the talk.
100%.
And speaking of keeping it real, I really like that this guide reminds us that it's totally normal for those first few dates to be awkward.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like they're giving you permission to just relax and kind of embrace the awkwardness.
We've all been there.
Seriously, it happens to everyone. And it's kind of nice that this guide recognizes that.
You know what I really like is it doesn't just stop at first dates. It says that in any relationship, it takes time to build a strong connection.
Right, like it doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly. You have to be patient. It's really those small moments, that make a relationship special. Those little inside jokes.
The memories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or discovering a band you both love. Or even just those silly disagreements.
Oh, for sure. It's those shared experiences that really matter. Which actually reminds me of another takeaway that I loved, the importance of taking things slow.
Yeah.
Which I think is so important because it's so easy these days to get caught up in the whirlwind of dating, especially with all the dating apps out there.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's so easy to just get caught up in like, what are we and where is this going? But this guide really encourages you to pump the brakes a bit and remember that truly building something meaningful takes time.
It really does.
It's like savoring a delicious meal. You don't want to just inhale it in one bite.
Yeah, you'd miss all the flavors.
Exactly. You want to enjoy every single bite.
I love that analogy. And it connects perfectly to what the guy says about exploring common interests. Imagine discovering that you and your partner both love to cook. You could try new recipes together, laugh about your disasters in the kitchen.
Or I'm sure there would be some kitchen disasters.
Always. And just create something delicious together.
Those shared experiences are like the foundation of a strong connection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're building something solid together instead of rushing to build the whole thing in a day.
Exactly. And hey, while you're building that foundation, why not add in some new experiences along the way?
I love that. The guy talks about that too, stepping outside of your comfort zone, maybe attending a concert of a band you've never heard of before, or trying a new type of food.
I think that's such a fun way to bond with someone. Okay, so you're navigating the dating world. Maybe you've gone on some fun dates, you've tried some new things together, and now you've found someone who you really connect with.
That's awesome.
Right. So now it's how do you build on that connection? How do you make it last?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Totally. And luckily for us, this guide has some answers. One of the biggest takeaways for me was how important communication is.
100%.
And it's not just about talking. It's about really, truly listening to your partner.
It's about active listening.
Yes.
Yes.
Active listening. Which basically means really absorbing what your partner is saying and making them feel heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For example, instead of just nodding along while your partner's telling you something important.
Which we're all guilty of sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. But instead, try reflecting their emotions back to them. You could say, it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated about this.
Yeah.
It shows them that you're not just hearing their words, but that you're actually trying to understand how they feel.
It's like you're validating their feelings, which can be so huge in a relationship.
It really can. It builds trust and intimacy. And speaking of communication, the guide also talks about the importance of using I statements, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh my gosh, yes. Statements are like my love language. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. It's instead of saying, you always leave your socks on the floor.
Right, which can sound accusatory.
Exactly. It's much better to say, I feel frustrated when I trip over socks on the floor. It's a small change, but it can make a huge difference.
Because it's less about placing blame and more about explaining how you feel.
Right. It's like you're taking ownership of your own emotions instead of pointing fingers.
Exactly. And that can make your partner much more receptive to what you're saying.
Totally. But let's be real for a second. Even with the best communication in the world, disagreements are going to happen. That's just part of being in a relationship.
Oh, for sure.
But I was glad to see that this guide doesn't shy away from conflict. In fact, it actually embraces those moments as opportunities to learn and grow together.
Yeah, that really stood out to me too. It talks about the importance of staying calm and remembering that even when you're arguing, you're still on the same team.
Oh, totally. Like your partners in this, not opponents.
Right. It's not about winning the argument. It's about resolving the issue together.
Exactly. So how do you do that? Well, this guide has got some really good advice. Like one thing it suggests is taking a breath and literally counting to 5 before responding.
That's so smart.
I know. It sounds so simple, but you would be surprised how much of a difference it can make.
It gives you a chance to cool down a little bit so you don't say something you'll regret.
Exactly. It's about responding, not reacting.
I love that. Responding, not reacting.
Another tip that I really liked was about finding common ground.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in your own perspective and your own side of the story.
Right. But if you can take a step back and try to see things from your partner's point of view.
Exactly. That's where the magic happens. Like, let's say you're arguing about vacation plans.
Oh, those can be tough.
Right. But instead of getting stuck in a beach versus mountains debate,
which can turn into a whole thing.
Totally. Instead of going there, try focusing on your shared desires. Maybe you both want to relax and explore new places.
And once you find that common ground, it's much easier to find a solution that works for both of you.
I completely agree. And sometimes finding that common ground means meeting in the middle, right? Like compromise.
Absolutely. And this guide makes a really good point about compromise, meaning that someone always has to lose out.
Right. It shouldn't be a competition.
Exactly. They give this example of a couple who have totally different ideas about how to spend their weekend.
Ooh, I can relate to that one.
Right.
Yeah.
One person wants to go out and paint the town red.
Have fun.
Yeah. And the other just wants to stay home and chill.
Weekends are for chilling.
I know, right? So what do? Well, they compromise. They decide to go out on Friday night.
Okay, fun.
Yeah. And then just relax and stay in on Saturday.
I love that. It's the best of both worlds.
Right. Everyone wins. And then there are those times when things get a little heated.
Oh, yeah.
Like maybe a disagreement escalates.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're about to say something you'll regret.
We've all been there.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the guide suggests setting a time limit.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
A time out for adults?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like hitting the pause button on the conversation before it explodes into a big fight.
I love that. The pause button?
Right. You can even say it out loud like, hey, I think we need to hit the pause button on this one.
That's so smart. I'm going to use that.
Do it. It gives everyone a chance to just cool off and come back to the conversation when they're thinking a little more clearly.
So much better than saying something you don't mean.
Exactly. And once you've both had a chance to cool down, it's time to come back together and try to find a solution.
And that's really the goal, right? To find a solution that works for both of you.
Exactly. And you know what?
Yeah.
The guide actually says that disagreements can be opportunities for growth.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it like that.
It's instead of seeing conflict as a bad thing, which we often do, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's what if we viewed it as a chance to understand each other better, to strengthen our bond?
Wow. I love that reframing. It's like you're choosing to see the positive side of something that's usually seen as negative.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, even though you might disagree, sometimes you're still on the same team.
I love that. You're a team. Okay, so you've hit the pause button, you've cooled down, you've come back together, you're working as a team to find a solution. What's next?
Well, now it's time for the apology.
Ah, yes, the apology. It can be a powerful thing.
It's so powerful. It's about acknowledging the impact of your words and actions and taking ownership of your role in the situation.
Even if you didn't mean to hurt the other person's feelings.
Exactly. Because sometimes it's not about intent, it's about impact. And then once you've both had a chance to apologize.
And hopefully forgive.
Yes, of course. Forgiveness is key. But anyway, once you've moved past the disagreement, that's when you can start setting those healthy boundaries.
Which I think is so important in any relationship.
100%. It's about creating those ground rules for future disagreements.
What are some examples of ground rules that couples can set?
Well, one ground rule could be no yelling.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. Or No name calling or even no bringing up past arguments. It's about keeping the conversation focused on the present issue.
So it's like setting those boundaries creates a safe space for you to communicate.
Exactly. It's like those guardrails you see on a winding mountain road.
Oh, I like that.
They're not there to restrict your movement. They're there to keep you safe. So to sum it all up, this guide is like a toolbox full of amazing advice.
It really is.
But if we had to pick just a few key ingredients for a healthy relationship,
What would they be?
for me, it's all about authenticity, empathy, and a willingness to grow together.
I love that. So show up as your true self, listen to your partner, and be open to learning and growing both as individuals and as a couple.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey, even the messy parts.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real magic happens.
I love that. And you know what? At the end of the day, every relationship is different.
So true. What works for one couple might not work for another.
Exactly. And that's okay. The important thing is to find what works for you and your partner.
Absolutely. And remember, relationships take work, but they're also incredibly rewarding.
So true. This deep dive has been amazing. We've learned so much about dating communication, conflict resolution.
All the good stuff.
I feel like I'm ready to go out there and find my person or like strengthen the bond I already have with my partner.
I love that. That's what it's all about.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a blast.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
And to all of you listening out there, keep those sparks flying. We'll see you next time.